Hi, and welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman, and today is part 2 of my Strip Up Your Stash with me. Today we're going to be using templates. We're going to be using a number of different templates you probably have in your sewing room already. Grab an OmniGrid ruler. This one happens to be a 6-inch ruler. Make sure that it just has that 45-degree line across the diagonal of that ruler. We're going to need that to make the triangles. We're also going to be using the orange peel ruler today. We're going to be using the hexi ruler today. We're going to be using the Dresden and the Rhombus. And the Rhombus is a great template because you get two in one. You're getting the equilateral triangle here when you just use that portion of it, and then you also get the entire rhombus when you use the whole thing. The simplest way to use your rulers and to cut your strips of fabric from your stash is to measure the height of your ruler. So for this rhombus, you'd measure from the top here to the bottom here. I believe that's a 5-inch width. So you'd use 5-inch widths from your stash, and that's what you would cut. And then you'd simply keep flipping this ruler across that 5-inch width of fabric strip to make your cuts and to cut your rhombuses. If you wanted to actually cut a triangle, you'd measure from this line. There is a line there that includes the 1/4 inch seam allowance at the bottom. Let me make sure you can see that. And you'll measure then from that line to the top, and whatever that measurement would be, I believe that's also 5 inches, you'd cut your strip of fabric that measurement, and then you just continually lay your template on there and flip it back and forth across that strip to cut your fabric. Let's say you're using a Dresden or the orange peel. You can put together strips of fabric. You can sew 2 or 3 or 4 different strips of fabric together, 1.5 inch strips, 2 inch, whatever you want. And you can actually lay this Dresden using either the top portion or the bottom portion or the whole thing, whatever you want, just following the lines. There are lines across this Dresden that you can use to make sure that with every cut you're matching it up properly. You're either laying the bottom at the bottom edge of your strip or the top or a particular line in between, and that's how you'd make your cuts. Let's go with this orange peel. The orange peel does have a line with a slit. It's a line there that you use for slitting your orange peel to turn it if you choose to turn your fabric and face it. You could also use this line as you're lining this up across your strip of fabric to make sure that it's perfectly level and parallel on the width of fabric strip. So as you're going to see today, there are different ways to use the templates that you own. These that I'm sharing with you right now are OmniGrid. Some of these are Missouri Star. I do inventory some Missouri Star templates on my website. I also inventory my own Quilting with Lori templates out on my website, so you can check that out. I'll have links below that you can check that out if you're interested in any of these. I want to share with you just a few quilts that I have made using templates and strips. This is my Christmas tree quilt, and it is using simply triangles all the way across. In fact, the background is using strips that I have cut from my stash and created an interesting background. It's not a boring one. It's all different background fabrics using triangles, and the tree itself was made using the triangles. And I'll include a picture here so that you can see the whole thing. Here's another one. I put together strips of fabric to create a little Christmas tree mat, and then I put some lace on it. So there's so much that you can do with strips of fabric in your scrap stash. I've also put together a kaleidoscope quilt, and these are equilateral triangles. So there are 6 equilateral triangles that are creating the hexi here, or the kaleidoscope, and here are 2 equilateral triangles making the beautiful diamond or the rhombus there. Now I'm going to be doing a separate video later on about kaleidoscopes and how to create those. They're really fun, very addicting. You'll enjoy them. Let's look at a few more. These are using Dresdens, and these are strips of Dresdens. Instead of putting a circle in the middle of that Dresden, you'll see I put a square, and that was appliqued in the center to cover up the center of the Dresdens. And then I actually cut the Dresden out as a square. So the Dresdens don't have to remain round. They can be square. So these were made using strips. And here is another one. This is one, it's called my Whimsical Garden quilt. And it was made using strips and the double wide Dresden. So you'll see here that these Dresdens here are made with 2 strips of fabric, and here you can see the mirror image. So we've got the green on the outside with the blueprint on the inside. Here the mirror image is the green on the inside and the blueprint on the outside. So that is really fun to be able to create mirror image flowers. And because it's a double wide Dresden, you make the points on both the small end and the large end, and then you can add an extra piece of fabric on the inside, and I added yellow in there. Now let's see if we can get this one on here. This is my burst. See if you can see all of that. And I call it my burst of rhapsody, but I'm using the burst template here, which has points at this end and points at this end. I put together strips of fabric, and I took that burst template and cut out each of the Dresdens, and then I used layer cakes to sew it together. And this was a really fun one. I was able to piece this in a night, just using a jelly roll and having fun creating a wonderful quilt here using that burst template, which is basically a Dresden with points on both ends. All right, here's a simple way to scrap up your stash using a simple ruler. This is an OmniGrid ruler, 6-inch ruler. Many quilters have this ruler, and you can easily create some beautiful blocks with a strip set and your ruler. And I have just tons of strips here, and I'm just putting some together. I'm putting them in order from light to dark. You can put them in order in any way you'd like. Maybe you'd like very bright, maybe you'd like them all pastel. Whatever you'd like to do. This is your quilt. Have fun with it. But what I'm going to do is literally lay this ruler on the strip set where I actually have 1/4 of an inch hanging off the edge right there. That will be my seam allowance because I'm going to be cutting triangles, and they're going to be sewn together here if that's what I choose to use when I put these together. I may end up flipping them around the opposite direction. We'll see here when I get to that point. So what I'm going to do is simply cut. I'm going to go ahead and I'm also just getting rid of this little point here and down there. Now that is going to allow that to turn into another square with the opposing strip set if I choose. And if I did, here is what I could do. I'm going to cut this one. Again, I'm just eyeballing that 1/4 inch seam allowance down there. I'm kind of using the dots here. There are dots there that will help you on the ruler to identify where that 1/4 inch is, so that this entire amount here is seam. And I'm lining it up straight here. And I'm going to go ahead and cut. And again, I'm going to get rid of that. It's just getting rid of a little bit of the dog ears. Okay, now let's put this together. Once you sew that together and press it open, let's pretend that I've sewn it, you have a new block. It's a beautiful block. You're not even using foundation piecing. You're simply just throwing strip sets together using your 6-inch ruler, or any size you want. You can make these strips as tall as you want. You can use as many strips as you want. You can make the sizes any size you want. These happen to be cut at 1.5 inches wide by the width of the fabric. But you can use any size, and just have fun with your rulers that you currently have on hand. You don't have to go out and buy new rulers to accomplish a lot of these fun things. You could actually strip this up and this up with plain fabrics. So I could put a cream fabric here, I could have put a brown fabric here, a triangle, and finish those up in that fashion. The sky's the limit on what you can do with this. So here is a 6-inch block I put together using those 2 triangles that I just created. A beautiful little block. You could actually use these triangles in corners of the block with a plain block in the center. There is so much you can do with the strip set and these triangles as you're working with blocks. Now let's take a look at the Star Maker. I have a Star Maker 6. This one I believe is a K-wood. Yes, this is a K-wood. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to lay this on my strip set. Let's move this out of the way here. I want to make sure you can see what I'm working on. Again, these are 1.5 inch strips sewn together, so they'll end up being 1 inch strips. And what I'm going to do is lay my ruler on here so that my seams are matching up in this area. And I'm going to start cutting some of these little triangles. So there's one. I'm going to have to bring this down so I don't hit the stand. And I want to make sure that I'm lining this up as I did on the same seam allowance here. So I'm lining these lines up just as I saw them on this one here. And I'm simply going to continue working my way around. Again, I lined up these 2 on the line. This one is just a little bit above it. There we go. And we're going to end up with a beautiful kaleidoscope. Here's a half hexie, and we complete it and we'll have a whole hexie, which in essence is a beautiful kaleidoscope. You could also put this around a square and you'd have a beautiful star. I just need to cut one more of them. But you get the general idea. There's so much that you can create with strip sets and simple rulers that you probably already have in your stash. Let me finish cutting a few more of these and I'll show you what the possibilities are. So the triangles that I cut with this Star Maker 6 by K-wood, they're all equilateral, which means all 3 sides are the same length. They're equal lengths. And so they'll go together in a number of different fun fashions. I just started showing you a few minutes ago. There's the half hexie. Here would be a whole hexie. You could swap these out. And you're seeing a beautiful kaleidoscope there. Isn't that gorgeous? That's fun. You could, as I mentioned before, if you had a square piece of fabric in the center, these could be placed around it and you'd have a beautiful star there. Let's see, there was something else that I had put together here. Let me do some playing with this. Oh, I know what it was. You could put this together so that they are there. I think that was what I was attempting earlier. So this is sort of a braid here. I'm just flipping these. There's 2 different colorways, as you can see. There's this colorway and these 3 are a different colorway. And I'm placing them all in the same direction in the row, but I'm making sure that the opposites, the opposing colorway, is sitting differently. It's kind of cattywampus, if you will, to these, where these are coming this way, these are going this direction, the stripes. So it's just fun. You could really have fun creating an interesting braid in your quilt. Here is a remainder strip set from my fence rail project from a previous video, and I would like to use it up. I have this orange peel template. It's the smaller one. It fits on 5-inch charm packs, I believe. But what I did to be able to place this on here, evenly, I've taken my another ruler and I've literally used the disappearing ink pen and I've drawn a line that goes straight across the center of that. I actually laid it on my mat, identified where the center was, and then traced along that. And that will wipe off, so I can remove that without any problems. But that is what I'm going to use to line up on this seam allowance as I cut out these fun little floral or flower templates. So let me go around here. I should be using my smaller rotary cutter. To me, that just seems to work better when you're going around templates that are curved like this. I guess it's okay though. I made it. All right. There's one. Again, I'm just lining up the line that I drew on the template to the seam allowance there in my strip set. And I'm going to just cut these out. This is a great way to make sure that you're using all of your strip sets. Because even if I don't use these beautiful orange peel floral pieces right away, I absolutely will put them in my orphan box and definitely will be able to use them at some time. Is that cute or what? I'll just continue. I think it's just so adorable I can't probably resist putting together some sort of a quilt, tabletop or a wall quilt, with these fun little flowers that will be perfect for fall. Look at that. Cute, cute, cute. I love it. You could put them together like this, where they're overlapping. I could put them together where the dark is on the bottom. Depends on what the background is. If I had a dark background, I'd probably lay them out like this so these the light petals would really stand out. If I had a lighter background, I would probably place them like this. And I can continue cutting. I should be able to get at least 2 more. I have a little strip left here, and I'm going to show you how you can also use a strip and this orange leaf or orange petal here to cut this lengthwise instead of crosswise. What you do want to do whenever you're working with templates and you're cutting strip sets, make sure that the points, the areas where there's going to be a seam allowance, aren't right on these seams. So if you'll notice here, the points are in the center of this strip, and this edge is out here, and this edge is out here, and it will not be a part of this seam allowance. So that's good. So that's what I'm looking for as I'm centering this on this piece, and I'm just going to simply cut it. And I'm going to have to move it here so I can continue cutting. And there, whoops, I missed this right here. So there we go. Here is one, and I forgot to cut off the dog ear. Here, let's get that. So there is one that's lengthwise. So that's kind of fun. You might want to play with your strip sets and use these lengthwise. I guess I don't have enough length there to cut 2 of them, but I just wanted to share with you how you could do that. Just be sure that you're not ending on seam allowances on the edges that are going to be encased, either appliqued or used. If it was a triangle or a square, you'd want to make sure that it's not ending on a seam allowance here. That would really make it quite bulky. But this works out perfectly. Here again I have my stash of strips that I have cut up. This particular strip set is 1.5 inch wide strip sets that I've put together, and I'm going to use my half hexie template here and create some beautiful quilts using that. So let's go ahead and line this up. I'll need to flip it around here so I can cut. The nice thing about these Missouri Star templates is that they have this little area here where you can actually cut off the dog ear, and that eliminates some of that excess fabric. So this will go in my crumbs basket to use in the crumbs. And now I'm just going to continue going down the line here and cutting the templates. And what you'll see here is a complete hexie if I choose to use that, or I could simply continue on down. That would be kind of silly, I think, to do that since that's just one continuous strip. But this would be fun to put together a hexie like this. They would all be done in straight rows. There would be no Y seams. You would simply be sewing these together like this, making sure the little dog ear, that one dog ear, hangs off as you do the stitching, 1/4 inch seam allowance, and so forth. But what a fun way to put together a quilt using your strip sets. So hexies are another great option to use your strip sets and templates. I would definitely connect these as half hexies so that you're not having to worry about any Y seams. This one I could certainly applique onto a quilt, but I just wanted to show you what it could look like when it's finished. Now let's take a look at the Dresden template. And there are many, many Dresdens out there. Most of the templates you're seeing me use here in these videos are my Missouri Star templates. But with the Dresden, you can cut anything from the entire 10-inch, in this case it's a 10-inch Dresden, or you can cut them really tiny, whatever size. There's lines all the way across with measurements there. And what I'm going to do is lay this on the strip set. In fact, that's what I did with this first one. I laid it on the strip set like that and made my first cut. Now I'm just going to continue flipping and cutting. Now let's say you wanted your to lay this on the 8.5 inch line. You could do that, just making sure that every time you flipped your template, you're laying it on the very same line so that all of your Dresdens go together perfectly. Or if you wanted to lay it where it's the bottom and you're going to lay it on the 4.5, whatever you choose to do, that's fine. It will work beautifully, but always make sure that you line up that strip on that same line and use that as you're flipping your template. And in my case, I am using the top of it. So there's that one. Here's another one. So mine are going to be fatter Dresdens. And there's a number of different ways that you can put Dresdens together. You can let them remain flat, or you can create points on the Dresdens. You can even create Dresdens that have rounded tops. There are Dresden templates out there that have rounded tops. All right, let's take a look at what I have here. These are obviously all different values. But I do have a total of, hopefully I've got them in here so that you can see them. All right, so I have all of these. I've got 6 of them. And again, you're getting mirror images here. So if you wanted to, you could put them together in straight rows to get more of a modern look if you wanted to do that. Or the other way to use a Dresden is to create the point. And to do that, you fold it and the top of it, right sides together. The top of it is what you're going to sew, 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then you're going to open it up and have the point. Let me do that. I'll bring it back to the tabletop and show you what that looks like. So I've taken a couple of the Dresdens and I've made the point. So basically, as I showed you, you're going to fold them right sides together, and you're going to sew 1/4 inch along the top on this straight edge. You're going to sew that 1/4 inch. Let me bring it over here so you can see better. And then you're going to, I like to press my seam open, and then I flip it right side out. And then what's really important when you do that is that this seam allowance is down the very center of the back of that Dresden when you press it. If it's cockeyed, then your Dresden point is going to be cockeyed, and you don't want that. You want that Dresden to be perfectly straight, so make sure that that's pressed. I've just finger pressed it right now, but make sure it's pressed where that comes straight down the center. And I have a couple of them here. So here I did the mirror image one, and let me flip it open. And you can use, I'm just going to use a little pin here right now to get the point up. And I'm going to finger press it, but I will take these to the iron and get them pressed. But to put them together, when I sew Dresdens together, I like to, you want to put them right sides together, and I like to start sewing from the shoulder. I call these the shoulders. These are the shoulders of the Dresdens. And I start sewing up there to ensure that this is perfectly even here. And then you just sew 1/4 inch seam allowance down to the raw edge. And it doesn't matter if the raw edges don't match up well. All of that raw edge is going to be hidden underneath of a circle or the center of the flower, the Dresden flower. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this for you and show you what this looks like. So I've sewn the Dresden together, starting at the shoulder down to the raw edge, pressed open my seam allowances, and that allows that shoulder to match very nicely. And then you're not so worried about the raw edge down here, because once you put these all together, you're going to end up putting a circle or some sort of an applique in the center of this. Or if not, you can always just turn it under and applique it like that so it has a finished edge. But these beautiful striped Dresdens are wonderful, and you could make them as long as you choose to. I just started out with a 4-strip set, and if you went with maybe a 10-inch strip set where you had 10.5 inches of fabric, you'd have a much longer strip set. How pretty that would be. So here is the last template that I wanted to share with you, and this is the Rhombus template. And what I love about the Rhombus is that you get 2 items for the price of 1, basically. If you notice this line here, that is an equilateral triangle. So I can line up my template on the edge of the fabric and keep flipping it and create some equilateral triangles. I can also use the entire template to create a rhombus. And then when they're sewn together, they're sewn in diagonal rows. So you're sewing straight lines in diagonal rows of these beautiful rhombuses. So there's a couple of different ways you can use this template, and it's a wonderful way to create some beautiful quilts. So let me show you how you would cut using this first of all as a rhombus. I've just stitched together some of my strip sets, so I had one tall enough for this rhombus. I'm lining up this line on the seam line of the fabric here. Let's see if I can get all the way around here. I'll flip that like that, move that out of the way. I will have to turn this. Get everything lined up again, or am I still in the... I'm going to make sure you're still able to see what I'm doing here. Okay. Oops. All right. So there is a rhombus. Now let's head over here back to the bottom of this strip set, and I'm going to line up everything on this line. I want to make sure, and you've got to make sure your fabric is under here, because you need this little 1/4 of an inch seam allowance there. So I'm going to line it up on that line. Make sure you can see what I'm doing. There is one. So there, oops, I forgot to get rid of the dog ear on this side. There we go. So there's one. And then the other one, typically this strip here would not be there. You'd just have the 3 strips. So I am going to line this up, making sure that that is straight, and that line would have been on the edge of the seam allowance of this fabric, but I'm going to go ahead and just cut that away here. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and cut it away because it would not have been there otherwise. And I want you to see, get rid of the, and you would then no longer have this seam allowance there either. You don't really want that, but I want you to be able to see how this can go together, and it can create some beautiful quilts. If you were to continue cutting these out of your strip set, you would have mirror images again, and you could create a beautiful hexie. You could create kaleidoscopes. There's just so much that you can do with these. So have fun with your rhombuses as well, and try cutting a number of them from your strip sets and see what you can create using them. Thank you so much for joining me today as I've taught you a little bit more about stripping up your stash using templates that you have in your sewing room. I hope your imagination has gotten piqued and that you'll go ahead and start creating some beautiful quilts in your sewing room using those templates that you already have. And I would love to see pictures of them. So please go out to my Quilting with Lori Scrap Up Your Stash Facebook group page and post photos out there. Everyone loves to see those. It really helps to inspire all of us to get more quilting done. And if you like the content that I do provide, please don't forget to go out and like and subscribe to my channel, and then also give me a comment. I love to read the comments from my viewers. And don't forget to share these videos with your quilting friends and your quilt guilds. All of that really does help my channel get out to more quilters just like yourself. So I look forward to seeing you again next week as we have part 3 of a Strip Up Your Stash with me. And this is where we're actually going to be using all of the leftover bits that we've created as we've been stripping up and creating our beautiful quilts. But we always have leftover bits, and I call them crumbs. Many of us do call them crumbs. And I'm going to share with you what you can do with crumbs. So you'll see that next week. So until then, thank you so much for joining me, and happy quilting.